The 2023 schedules are out, and today we are predicting each of the Chargers' 17 games, and somehow I have them starting off 5-0.
You are Locked On Chargers, your daily podcast on the Los Angeles Chargers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up, and welcome into the Locked On Chargers podcast. I'm your host, Daniel Wade, joined as always by my co-host, David Drogemeyer, and we've been covering the Chargers together now for 7 seasons, but this is our 5th season as a host of the Locked On Chargers podcast, bringing you your team every day. Thank you guys, as always, for making us your first listen today, and to make sure you never miss the show, go subscribe or follow for free on YouTube and listen wherever you get your podcasts. David, what do we got today?
Well, we knew who the Chargers' opponents were going to be. Now we know when the Chargers are going to play them, and we know how many primetime games they are. And so now I think it's the right time to go game by game and see what we think is going to happen with this 2023 schedule.
Yeah, I'm really excited and somehow went overly optimistic, at least with the way the Chargers are starting the season. And it kind of feels like they need to get off to a quick start because they have some really, really tough games later on in the season. But this episode is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook, official sportsbook of the NFL. Make every moment more. Visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn today to get started. David, let's start with the first game of the season here as we make our predictions, way too early predictions, of course. Going through these games and getting to what the Chargers' final record is. Both of us having the Chargers at double-digit wins this year. But how do they get there? So let's start with the first week, David. The Dolphins, Tua versus Justin Herbert again. What will happen in this one in 2023?
Yeah, big-time matchup at home for the Chargers. A great way to start off the 2023 schedule, I think. I think the Chargers and Brandon Staley really found the recipe to try to limit Tua. I think they're going to be able to effectively employ that again or deploy that tactic again. So I think with, hopefully you have the Chargers with a healthy offensive line and a full complement of weapons. I think Justin Herbert kicks off the 2023 schedule with a bang and he really airs it out. I got the Chargers taking the victory in game 1.
Yeah, well, I think this could be a very, 50-50 game. This is one of the games that worries me the most in the first 5 weeks, and that's what we're going to get to here. I have them going 1-0. Obviously, I have them starting off 5-0 to start this season. But Herbert versus Tua, can Staley repeat the dominant defensive game plan? First game of the Chargers' new offense, that scares me a little bit. But I think that it's definitely a game that they can get done. Coin flip right now, but I have the Chargers getting off to a 1-0 start. And I also, David, for the Tennessee Titans, have them beating Derrick Henry and the Vikings to go 3-0 to start this season. I think with the Titans, obviously it's a fresh Derrick Henry at the beginning of a season. That scares me. But they kind of crumbled down the stretch last season, right? Now Ryan Tannehill has another quarterback behind him, and Will Levis that was taken. Now 2, right? If you're talking about Malik Willis as well. But it seems like things are kind of going the wrong direction. I think the biggest thing that would, I think that is going against them is their wide receiver core is just, who is it, right? Traylon Burks, I liked a lot coming out, but that's basically the only dude. How do you feel about those next batch of games, the Titans and the Vikings?
Yeah, I think the Titans, there's just a lot of uncertainty there with the quarterback position. I don't think they really know who that's going to be. I think it's going to take them some time for them to kind of find that identity. I think the Chargers already know who they are and how they're going to attack, so I have them being able to limit Derrick Henry and take that victory. I get them going 2-0. And then against the Vikings, this is one that I've gone back and forth with on. I understand the state of the Vikings right now. We were talking about it a little bit before we started recording, is there's a lot of moving parts there, a lot of differences. It's a very different football team, but the Chargers really struggle against the Vikings. They've dropped the last 3 contests, and unfortunately, I have them making it 4 losses in a row. This is where they pick up their first loss of the season.
I totally get that. I think for me, the biggest thing that makes me feel better about the matchup is just kind of the turnover that they have. They still have a lot of good players. A lot of it, I think, depends on how you feel about Kirk Cousins. I don't put as much historical kind of, value on those other losses just because it's like, I think Justin Herbert's only played them 1 time, right? And he got picked out by Eric Hendricks. And I think the thing is, too, is it's like in a completely new coaching staff from every one of those losses.
Right. Mike Zimmer.
Yeah. Right. It was against Mike Zimmer, and that defense definitely gave Justin Herbert fits the first time he went against them. I think between the Titans in the Vikings. Like the Titans, they have Mike Vrabel and Derrick Henry. So like that's going to be a tough game. I don't think any of these are going to be easy for the Chargers. But I also think if this game happened last year with Kellen Moore at the helm of the offense, I don't think it's a 17-14 game with Justin Herbert having to pull out some heroics at the end, right? So like I think the Chargers should be able to, put up more points than they did last season. And I also think it's kind of one of those things where Derrick Henry could still go off, but like somebody has to do something around him, right?
Yeah.
One of those receivers, the quarterback's going to have to do something. So I think the Vikings, out of those two games, they're going to be very interesting. 13-4 last year. They were a very, very good team. But they lost Eric Kendricks, Adam Thielen, probably Dalvin Cook, according to reports. They just traded Zadarius Smith. They lost Dalvin Tomlinson, a couple guys in the secondary.
A lot of turnover.
Sure, they added Marcus Davenport, Byron Murphy, Jordan Addison, who we liked but didn't really like for the Chargers, right? So it's still Justin Jefferson, right? It's still going to be a competitive game, I think. But I think this is the year they kind of kick that against the Vikings. Let's move to the 4th and 5th game, David, because Chargers go Las Vegas week 4, and then they have a bye week in week 5, and then go to Dallas in week 6, revenge game for Kellen Moore. How do you think these next two games play out?
Yep. So at home against the Raiders, I have some major question marks about the Raiders' offensive line. I don't think they know who's going to be playing for them. I still think they're going to be trying to figure that out. And also, I have some question marks about their secondary. I think you know what the pass rush is, but I mean their defenders on the back end don't scare me at all. I actually have the Chargers taking this victory against the Raiders, getting that W at home, then enjoying a bye week, and then you got the Cowboys on Monday Night Football at home, the Kellen Moore revenge game. You know this means something to him. He's probably not going to make that big of a deal of it, but this is going to be one of those games where he's going to want to run up the score, and I think they are going to accomplish that victory, accomplish that mission. I have the Chargers taking that victory, and at this point, after 5 games, I got them 4-1.
Yeah, I think you'd sign up for that right now. I think all Chargers fans should sign up for that right now. I mean, winning your first 5 games is super unlikely. And I mean, there's barely any chance that it happens, but like I'm going through these, at least in this part of the season, I had them pulling it off. I think for me with the Raiders, it's like I'll believe in the Josh McDaniels, Jimmy G, dynamic duo when I see it. Like it's just hard for me to see that right now. I like Michael Mayer, who they took in the draft, but I don't know. I like the receiving trio a lot between Hunter Renfrow, Devontae Adams, and then bringing in, Jacoby Myers. So it's going to be an interesting team, but I have to see it. It doesn't scare me yet. I would love to get that win against the Raiders, but the only teams I think that are close for me as far as wins that I appreciate more than kind of division rivals like the Raiders. Raiders are number 1 inside the division, obviously. But
always
outside of that, I'm pretty sure it's the Cowboys and the Patriots are the teams I want the Chargers to beat the most. Not that I think
and the
they
Chiefs.
Will.
I mean, the Chiefs are always
of course, but I'm talking about outside of the division. Like
outside of the division,
In the division, it's easy. Outside of the division, I don't think there's 2 other teams besides the Patriots and the Cowboys that I would want the Chargers to beat more. So I like that. I mean, the Dolphins somehow have kind of skyrocketed up there too, just with all the banter back and forth between the teams. But Kellen Moore revenge game. The Dallas defense is still going to probably be really, really good this year. And they also added, Brandon Cooks. They added Stephon Gilmore defensively. I think it's going to be a good defense. I don't know if the Chargers kind of light them up, but for some reason, man, I don't feel like the Chargers are losing to the Cowboys this year because the Cowboys also lost a big asset in Kellen Moore. That's just what I think about Kellen Moore. I think he's really good. And I think they lose that, David. I mean, that would be sweet, sweet revenge. Mike McCarthy gets rid of Kellen Moore. Really, at the end of the day, that's what happened, right?
Yes.
To go back and get that sweet revenge and to, kind of have a chance with the bye week to really get this offense humming, 6 weeks into the season, I could see them doing it and pulling off the upset.
That Kellen Moore is taking that bye week and he is putting in all of the extra work, all of the extra attention to try to go out there and prove the Dallas Cowboys organization, Mike McCarthy, wrong, that they made the wrong decision. You made the wrong choice. You let a top 5 offensive coordinator leave and go somewhere else because you didn't like some of the philosophies. I don't get that. I mean, the results were there and they were there over a good period of time. There's plenty of sample size to suggest that Kellen Moore did a fantastic job as the Cowboys offensive coordinator. He's going to be looking forward to this game, and he is going to want to get this W. It's been circled ever since the opponents were announced.
One, I think the other underrated part of the Kellen Moore signing specifically for that game, David, is he knows what Mike McCarthy wants to do, right?
Absolutely,
I mean, maybe it was never Mike McCarthy's total offense there last year, but he knows where their tensions were. He knows exactly what he wants to do more now that Kellen Moore's not there, right?
Yeah.
So I think that's another great advantage the Chargers will have because of him having that extra bye week to kind of, give all that insight and to hopefully give the defense an edge going up against that Cowboys offense that, is kind of in flux a little bit. And Dak Prescott, I mean, pretty much ended his season as poorly as he possibly could, at least in the regular season. Didn't look great in the playoff loss either. But we haven't talked about the Chiefs yet, and that's going to be the biggest barometer for the Chargers season. Can they go 6-0 and take down the Chiefs in their first matchup with Kellen Moore going up against that team with Justin Herbert? We're getting to that and also how they're going to do against the Jets, the Lions, who really scare me, and much more coming up after this. But first, I need to tell you guys that you need to make a fast break to FanDuel during the NBA playoffs because they are the official betting sponsor of the Locked On Chargers podcast. And also right now, because new customers can get a no-sweat first bet up to $1,000. That's $1,000 back in bonus bets if your first bet doesn't win. Lakers versus Nuggets, Western Conference Finals kicking off tomorrow on Tuesday. I'm excited for that. But if you guys want to have some more juice on the game, if it can't get exciting enough, you can go on to FanDuel because they have so many great things and promotions going on during the playoffs. And they have a lot of just little dual parlays where you can pick a couple of things to happen and really juice up the odds there. You can go LeBron James points or Anthony Davis blocks or whatever you're looking for. The best place in the playoffs to go is FanDuel. There's no place better to get all of your playoff action. So visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and get a no sweat first bet up to $1,000. That's FanDuel.com/lockedon. FanDuel, official sports betting partner of the NBA. David, at this point, I have the Chargers 5-0 somehow, and I'm not the optimist on this show. It was weird going through that, but I can see a path to it happening. It just doesn't seem.
I can see it too, for sure.
And I do think that they kind of have to get fat on some of those teams they have at the beginning because I think those are going to be some of the better matchups that they're going to get.
Yeah, got to take care of their business, right?
Absolutely. And I think especially when you hear what these next 6 games are, you're going to wish you got a lot in at the very beginning because it starts with the Kansas City Chiefs in week 7 and then the Bears. So, I think, the Bears are another one kind of in this sweet spot, David, where, that feels like one of the games in this 6-game stretch that they kind of have to pull off. But that's even scary with Justin Fields. How do you think it turns out against the Chiefs and then the Bears?
Yeah, so Arrowhead, really tough place to play. The Chargers always play the Chiefs very, very tough. I mean, this game is not going to be any exception. I think it's going to be another slobber knocker. I mean, these teams are they're right there. They're right next to each other. They're so close. I really, really want to give the Chargers this victory. I want to see it happen. I'd struggled getting there. So unfortunately, I have them losing this game to the Chiefs in Arrowhead. But then you go to the Bears on Sunday Night Football at home. I think Brandon Staley is going to have a great game plan to go ahead and frustrate and really try to confuse Justin Fields. I think he's going to accomplish that mission. I think the Chargers are going to pick up that victory. So they're going to split those 2 games, lose to the Chiefs, but pick up a nice victory on Sunday Night Football against the Bears.
And then what do you have them at that point?
Yeah, so at that point, that would make them 5-2.
Okay. So, I have them also losing to the Chiefs. I'm very excited about that first matchup because, like I said before, you have a little bit of a chance for Kellen Moore's offense to get into a groove because it's week 7. You have already had your bye week to kind of make the needed adjustments, right? And now that you've kind of seen what it looks like through the first month of the season, I think that is one place where the Chargers actually can benefit from the early bye week because overall I think it's a bad thing to have it that early.
Yeah, I'm not a fan.
Week 5. But every time we've seen the Chargers in their bye week under Brandon Staley, we've seen some immediate kind of fixes on some things, and they've come out a little bit better afterwards. Last year, was right before the Chargers ended up, rattling off those 4 wins in a row. I am still in kind of a prove-it mode. At least, maybe you could talk me into a split. We'll talk about week 18 later with the Kansas City Chiefs, but I'm going lost 5-1 for the Chargers at that point. Chiefs are still going to be great. When you lose Tyreek Hill and still come back and sweep the Chargers the next year and go win the Super Bowl.
And still have one of the top offenses in the NFL. It's like, my goodness.
And, the top offensive mind, top quarterback, all of those things. So I think the Chargers have always been competitive. Brandon Staley's defense has actually held the Chiefs to some of their lower point totals in his matchups against them. Now they have Kellen Moore. This is his first chance to show that he can keep up with that high-powered offense. But week 8, I have the Chargers getting a big win, going to 6-1. Justin Fields' legs scared me. Worst team in the league, though, last year, right? This is the team that had the number 1 overall pick.
Yeah.
I think the Chargers will still be good enough to get that game done, even with the obvious things they have going against them going into it. I think the Bears are just another team that's still in flux. Maybe they take a small step up, but I think the Chargers are going to need that game in this stretch because they have a couple more really, really tough ones after that, David. Week 9 against the New York Jets, Week 10 against the Detroit Lions. How do you see those ones going?
Yeah, this is going to be a tough stretch for my optimistic Charger fans out there. Even for me, this one was tough. I think the Jets with Aaron Rodgers, with some really like legit wide receivers. I mean, you saw, I think earlier on in his career what he is capable of doing when he's got a guy like Devontae Adams, and when he's got other guys that have really done some really good work for him. He's very, very, very effective. So, and that defense is one of the best defenses in the NFL. So I think that's going to be a really tough one. I got the Chargers dropping that game to the Jets, and then coming back to the Lions at home, I think this is another really tough matchup, and I think the Lions are an up-and-coming team. I think they're a very physical football team. I think they're going to impose their will, and unfortunately, I got the Chargers dropping that game too, so I got 2 losses back-to-back.
Yeah, so for you at that point, they're at 5-4, which is still, I think, where a good place to be at this point in the season, right? Especially with how tough some of these teams are. I also have them losing both those games. I mean, I think for the Jets, that team was almost a playoff team with Zach Wilson at quarterback, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I think there's question marks
like
on the
every other
offensive line.
quarterback they had playing for them too.
Sure. They traded Elijah Moore, brought in Allen Lazard, brought in Randall Cobb. I mean, I think they're still, they get Breece Hall back too, who looked really good before he got injured last year in a really small sample size, but someone we liked a lot coming out of the draft.
Yeah.
I like that team, and I don't think Aaron Rodgers is going to lose that game. They have a very, very good defense. Defense doesn't always, travel year to year like that. So we'll see what they look like in Week 9, and it could look like an entirely different game. Right now, I have it as a loss. I think the Lions, David, scare me more than any other NFC North team.
I would agree.
It's the only, this one scares me the most out of any NFC North team. Great running game, but also, big questions on defense and a really puzzling draft class, I think, at the top of it for sure.
Yeah.
With Jahmyr Gibbs, traded DeAndre Swift, brought in Jack Campbell in the first round. Just kind of some odd choices there, and they have some players suspended for gambling. So how will that impact the season? I mean, it's not big name players, so I don't think it'll be too much.
Jameson Williams.
Yeah, besides Jameson Williams, that's the one big player, and then some guys that most people probably have never heard of. But Jameson Williams, that would, it's still Jared Goff.
He'll be back for that game though.
No, exactly. Yeah. So that part won't
really
matter. Yeah, not all of them got suspended for the whole season, but
yeah.
Now we have Week 11, Green Bay Packers at that point. After that loss, I have the Chargers at 6-3. Still great, and obviously you take that right now. But after a 5-0 start, it's a little slide there. The Green Bay Packers and the Baltimore Ravens. How do you see those ones going?
Yeah, so Packers game here, first game with the new quarterback, Jordan Love.
And Herbert's first matchup with him, too.
Yeah,
right?
Exactly. Herbert's first matchup. Jordan Love, I feel like, is a gunslinger. I think this is a guy, when I was evaluating him, I remember he had some really good arm talent. Like, he could make some throws, but I think he trusts his arm a little bit too much, and I think he's still going to be figuring that out at this point in the season. I think the Chargers are going to take that victory. I think they're going to get that win. And then this one against the Ravens I think it's going to be a shootout. I really do believe that, and I feel like the Chargers are going to end up with the ball at the end, and I think they're going to win it on the last drive. So I have them
Baltimore?
Against Baltimore. So I have the Chargers beating the Packers and beating the Ravens, and then they're sitting here after this stretch at 7-4.
Yeah, so we're going to get to the same spot either way. I mean, I think the Packers game is probably tougher than you think it is. I mean, I think in the games we've seen Jordan Love, in small sample sizes, he's been pretty conservative, right? It seems like they've at least ironed out some of that. And I think, very good offensive line potentially, very good running game with Aaron Jones and A.J. Dillon scares me for sure. And I think their defense could have a bounce-back season either after getting a new defensive coordinator. So I think that one's going to be tough, but I have the Chargers pulling it off in a close one. 7-3. I wish Lamar Jackson left. I'll start with that.
Don't we all?
That team, Todd Monken, offense coordinator, I like the Ravens a lot this year. Adding Odell Beckham Jr., adding Zay Flowers, a guy we really liked a lot. And I mean, that defense basically single-handedly made them a playoff team last year, right? I mean, they had Huntley starting for way too many games for that team to still make the playoffs last year. We'll see what Lamar's health is like at that point, right? We'll still see if he's a guy that's still healthy, but we'll see what the Chargers' health is like at that point.
Right.
I have them dropping that one to get to 7-4. So me and you both at 7-4, entering this final 6-game stretch for the Chargers. But I'm a fan of the Ravens. I mean, the Ravens have always been tough. That defense, obviously, under a different defensive coordinator, is one of the worst games that Justin Herbert has had to this point in his career. I'm very excited to not have him hamstrung against some of these good defenses with Joe Lombardi, though, obviously. That's probably the biggest difference they have there. But the dreaded New England Patriots are somebody they still have coming up. Can they take that one out? They have 2 games against the Broncos in their last 6 games, or their last 5 games. So we're going to have to see how that looks under Sean Payton. What can he get out of Russell Wilson? And then a brutal 4-game stretch down the end with the Buffalo Bills, Kansas City Chiefs. How are we predicting it? We're getting to that right after this. All right, David. Well, it's always fun to do these too early predictions, and we'll see kind of what this roster looks like, if there's any additions to it. Still, by the end of, the offseason, by the time we get to training camp, we'll probably see a couple of additions potentially, even though it's been quiet after the draft so far. But that's just for today. Tomorrow, I'm very excited about, because tomorrow we're regrading the 2022 draft for the Chargers. I was looking back at my grades. Pretty close on some of these guys, kind of low on some of the other guys, but tomorrow we'll be getting into, now that we have a season of most of these players, what our 2022 draft grades were from that class, and then also have some training camp battles later on this week for the everydayers out there. Loaded week for you guys, and we'll also be doing some fan stuff, Fan Mail Friday this week as well, so you guys can get in and get your questions in for that as well, and tell us what you want us to talk about. But it starts here, David. Week 13, the Chargers are 7-4 for both of us at this point. So this is the Evil Empire, and then you have Denver Broncos. So this is going to be a really interesting 2-game stretch for the Chargers. They get a chance to really defeat their biggest dragon outside of the division, probably, with the New England Patriots, especially, historically in the last 20 years. And then you get the first game against Denver Broncos, Week 14. You don't get them early, right, when they're still kind of figuring things out. You get them in an important part of the season for you. How do you see these games going?
Yep, Evil Empire for sure. Just this is definitely Smaug the Terrible here, the Patriots. The Patriots have beat the Chargers every single time since October 12th, 2008. 15 years since the last time the Chargers beat the Patriots. That ends.
And that was Matt Castle.
This year.
Sorry.
Yes, that was Matt Castle, yes.
Ugh.
Horrible. Wow. I'm sick and tired of it. It finishes this year. J.C. Jackson revenge game. J.C. Jackson is going to be back. He's going to be healthy. He's going to get 2 picks, and he's going to help the Chargers beat the Patriots and get that big victory. And then they go to the Broncos at home. I think at home they are going to take the victory against the Broncos. I like them much better at home against the Broncos. I still think that Sean Payton is going to make that more difficult, because they're going to turn that into more of a running football team, which I think is going to make them definitely more effective. You're going to take more off of Russell Wilson's plate, which I think is the right thing to do. But I think the Chargers are going to find a way to get this victory at home. So after those 2 games, I have them an updated record of 9-4.
Ooh, I love that. To me, I think the Broncos games are another one that are really hard to predict. One of the harder games to kind of project this season. And I think, it's a 50-50 one for me, I think. So at Week 13, Patriots, I have them slaying one of the biggest dragons as well. Justin Herbert is 0-2, 45-0 game as a rookie, and a 27-24 game in 2021. So Bill Belichick has absolutely, destroyed Justin Herbert, basically. I mean, even the 27-24 game wasn't probably as close as it seemed. Right? That was that Kenneth Murray game where we thought he might be really good, because he had the best game of his
11
life.
tackles,
even in a terrible loss. But this is the other thing. The Kellen Moore, having Justin Herbert with Kellen Moore going up against the Evil Empire, I think matters, because last time Kellen Moore played Bill Belichick in 2021, he hung 35 on him in a win. So I think that's the biggest thing Justin Herbert has going for him going into that one. And I just don't trust in Bailey Zappi or Mac Jones. I'll have to see that before I believe it. I have them losing the first matchup against the Broncos to go to 8-5 at that point in the season. First time against Sean Payton. Wish they had him earlier in the season. I think if you're going to go 1-1, I think the home game makes more sense. But for some reason here, I have them losing that. I mean, more physical team probably this year, right? Total kind of transformation, I think, of the offense there. And getting Javonte Williams back, I think, is huge. So I have them at 8-5 at that point. Now we go to Week 15 and 16, David. The Raiders and the Bills. I'm so excited for that Bills game. But let's start with the Raiders, David. What do you think is going to happen in their second go-around? You had them winning the first one. What do you think happens in round 2?
I have the Raiders losing to the Chargers again, and the Chargers doing what they should do which is sweep the Raiders
Please.
for the first time in a very long time. It is time for the Chargers to get back to their stretch of dominance like they had from 03 to 09, where they beat the Raiders 13 straight times. So I think that is going to be the beginning of that. And then you have a very exciting, very big ticket matchup against the Buffalo Bills on a Saturday night, a special Saturday night game
Peacock
at home.
only. Yeah.
Peacock only. Yeah, this one is going to be awesome. I'm very, very excited for it. I think the Bills are one of the best teams in the NFL. I think this is going to be a true barometer game for the Chargers. Unfortunately, I just think the Buffalo Bills are really, really tough, and I don't know if the Chargers are going to be able to pull this one out, so I got them losing this one at home, as much as it pains me. And so after those two games, we got 10-5 for the Bolts.
So I have the Chargers also sweeping the Raiders. It's one of the things I want to happen most this season.
Yes.
I mean, we'll see if Las Vegas is in playoff contention. We'll see if Jimmy G is still out there at that point, right?
Yeah,
Because
family,
that's
trust, and respect, everybody.
very tough for him to stay on the field for a whole season. Easy for me to say, right? Covering the Chargers.
Right.
Staying on the field. But I also have them losing the Buffalo Bills game and getting to 9-6 on the season. I think it's one of the biggest tests. I think it'll be a great kind of showing of what you can do and what you can, potentially achieve in the playoffs if you can take down a big dog like that in December when the lights are bright. I love that game. I'm very excited for it. Hopefully the Chargers don't let me down. But I think even if, they have an exciting game and a loss, it could still be a very, very good game and a very fun game to watch. Josh Allen, Justin Herbert, prime time, the best quarterback matchup this season outside of the Patrick Mahomes division. So very, very excited for that game. But now let's move to, at 9-6, David, the Broncos in Week 17 and the Kansas City Chiefs in Week 18. How do you see the Chargers closing out this season? You have them at a great record right now. Can they pull off these last two?
Yeah, so I think these last two, this is really, really tough. And I absolutely hate playing the Denver Broncos in the middle of dead winter. It's just going to be frigid, cold. The Chargers, they just don't do well in those environments, and I just don't see them picking up this victory as much as I want to see it. I have them dropping this game to the Broncos. They split the series with them, but I have them against the Kansas City Chiefs at home, finishing up their season, getting a very, very big victory over the Kansas City Chiefs, and they finally split after having so many competitive games the last several years. I have them pick that victory and sting their climb to ascension to hopefully eventually dethroning the Chiefs, and that means I have them finishing with an overall record of 11-6.
Yeah, I know a lot of people are going 9-8. I know there's probably no reason to believe that the Chargers should, knock off the Chiefs because they haven't given you any reason over the last couple of years, right?
Yeah.
So, I think the one big thing is I think between Kellen Moore and Quentin Johnston, I think that might get you one against the Chiefs this year. I also have the Chargers winning that game against the Chiefs. And I have the Chargers winning in Denver in a very important game at the end of the season, have a chance to figure out, what you want to do differently against the Sean Payton-led Broncos. I have the Chargers finishing, that tough stretch down the season at 3-1, those last four games. I think they beat the Raiders both times. I think they split with the Broncos, and I think they split with the Chiefs to go 4-2 inside this division. Probably a lot of, pretty optimistic at this point for both of us at 11-6. I think last year we had the Chargers going 12-5, but it just doesn't seem crazy to me, David. It doesn't seem crazy, but also we're at a spot right now where everybody's fully healthy and we know it can't always stay that way.
And it's not going to stay that way. And so, this is just the way it looks like right now, just hoping and praying that you're as healthy as possible and that, you have the whole season in front of you. And so you can just imagine, I feel very comfortable saying that if the Chargers are healthy, I can see them being able to beat anybody on their schedule. But I also know, as a Chargers fan, nothing ever happens the way you want it to, and things are inevitably going to go wrong. So you have to account for that when you're taking a look at the schedule and trying to figure out how they're going to end up.
I think if we're, assuming 17 games of Justin Herbert, I don't think anything's out of the question.
That's right.
The Chargers didn't add a lot this offseason, right? But
right.
Maybe there's something to keeping a core together and having pretty much this whole same team have more chemistry running it back this year. A couple guys are a little older for sure. But it's not far-fetched for me to see a more healthy season from Keenan Allen or a more healthy season from Joey Bosa, right?
Yeah.
Having Rashawn Slater, like that is
Yes.
important, right? But I think
Massively.
the Chargers, add some key depth. And I think that especially with, a couple more additions to create some competition on this roster, I could really, really get behind, an 11-win season, maybe even better. But it's easy to be optimistic at this point. I think both of us having them at 11-6, probably a little bit optimistic. But hey, that 10-7 team last year was about as battered as it gets. I think a little bit tougher of a schedule this year. We'll see how it shakes out. But thank you guys, as always, for checking out today's show. Make sure, because you know who we are, the everydayers know, we will be back with you tomorrow to regrade the 2022 draft class for the Chargers, get into Zion Johnson. What is the Jamari Sawyer grade at this point after what we saw from him in year one, right? What can you say about JT Woods and Isaiah Spiller at this point? So much to get into with those guys. And then also getting into early look at training camp battles, whose spots are on the line, and we'll get into that on Wednesday's show. But thank you guys, as always, for making us your first listen. To make sure you never miss the show, go subscribe to the Locked On Chargers YouTube channel and follow the show wherever you get your podcast from, right? And you can also find the show every day and get your questions in for Fan Mail Friday on all of our social media. You can also do it in the YouTube comments if you want to. Tell us what your predictions are for every game this season in the comments if you're watching on YouTube. But you can also hit us up on Twitter at LockedOnLAC for the show's page. You can find me on Twitter at DanTalkSports and David Drogmeyer on Twitter at DroTalkSD. You can also find us on Instagram at Locked On Chargers and our Locked On Chargers Facebook page. Thank you guys, as always, for making us your first lesson and being an everydayer. We'll be back with you guys tomorrow talking about this 2022 Chargers draft class. Until then, take it easy and go Bolts.